Okay, base maps. So just reviewing there a little bit. How do we start? You draw your map. You're going to have whatever perimeter that you have, whether it's square, rectangle, or anything like that. You need to have an arrow typically pointing north. That's how most people are going to present all maps. Think about any list that you might want to have, keys or legends, also color coding. So like the zones could be color coded, and then items within your zones might be color coded. Labeling a scale, if you're going to later, this is at the end when you make your final map that we're describing, have a scale. That can be in any tolerance that you like. Okay, it's very simple. Use a ruler that we have. 1 millimeter could equal, for instance, 1 meter or whatever scale you would like to fit. And then we're going to look at overlays and triangulation. So very simple. This is called an infrastructure scheme or a bubble diagram. So at the beginning, similar to us putting out the items, right? They're just kind of like rough sizes for what we think and where they're going to go. You can use that with like using bubbles or like squares. So when this person has taken a rectangular design and they just kind of wrote, I think the pond will be here, and wrote a circle. It's not exactly what the pond's going to look like, and they wrote pond inside. They wrote garden. They wrote barn. So this is about where the barn will be, and this is about where the garden will be. So it's very rough. This is sketching it. They're not trying to get it in the right place. They're trying to see the relationships of where the things are laid out. And when you do this, don't write very dark. Yeah, you just barely draw it in, and when it's settled, you can draw darker. Okay, so it's a technique. Don't like really try to draw it in. So a pencil, very, very lightly. If you need to erase it, it's very easy to erase and move something. Once you're settled, okay, you can draw it really dark. So infrastructure diagram, what's going on? At that point, they start to get a little bit more solidified. You see the garden starting to take more shape. They're having to put in paths, and they're looking for flow. How are you going to access and move in the property? So what is the flow? Flow of equipment, flow of materials, could be flow of animals. You may even look at wild animals may walk through my property at this place, so I want to plant some type of screen. Could be bushes, berry bushes, so if the deer walks by, he can eat the berries on his way to go, and he won't come over and eat my garden. Things like this. So they have flow. This is in architecture called a patch pattern diagram. This is starting to get into zones. So I've got my elements that I want. I've listed all the things that I want. I've got to get them into the plan. I have to start to arrange them in the order that I think they'll best fit, and then I can start to see zoning. So it's starting to get a little bit more zonal. And these are just, sketches. You're sketching. But the sketches get a little bit, as we go, a little bit more concrete. Toward we're finally happy. We're not moving anything around. And we've got the flows worked out. This is how we're going to interact with our gardens, our project. And remember, we're putting elements closer to our house that we use every day. Things that we don't use every day or we don't do, we put further away. Okay? So that's going to give us efficiency. So what we're trying to work out is the efficiency of our design with the elements that are going to meet our lifestyle. So here we can also look at topography. This is an attempt for a person to show slope. It's also nice if you could show it in a section view, which is a side. So if I cut this property. So if I was looking at this one, they're showing us that it's pretty flat here. Then it's slightly sloped, more sloped, and kind of falls off the edge. This property must have a big hill. So that means that the water flow or the arrows are indicating that when it's flat, it doesn't move very fast. But as it goes steeper and steeper, the water goes faster and faster. That would be indications of how to block, store, capture that water flow over the landscape. So that's their landform. So here we go, a little bit more with their water flows. And notice the entire time, the student with their sketches are drawing notes. They're writing all the notes or the things they're thinking about, and they're trying to capture their written or thought process into a graphical representation. When we finally present it, we're not going to have notes. The notes won't be there. But the notes help us, right, when we're drawing our sketches. So think about your sketches. You can have notes. You could keep your notes also in your notebook if you like. Like one page of my notebook, it says water. The next page says earthworks. The next page says animal systems, and I write all the notes for each of the things I'm thinking about, like in my notebook, for instance, or a section. So maybe 3 pages I'm going to make for animals, and 3 pages I have for plants. 3 pages I have for my garden. These are the sections. I'm starting to capture my information, try to get those sections of thought patterns, what I'm thinking about my garden or what I'm thinking about my animal system, and I'm trying to get that into a map, a graphical representation. So then access and circulation, once they've got it more concrete, this is exactly where those items are going to be. We can see this whole series is just thinking about how people are going to interact with the design. And then we could think about like the types of pathways we want. I could say, well, I'd like my pathways to be 1 meter wide or 1.2 meters wide. I like this pathway to be with stone. This pathway can be grass. This pathway may be gravel. This pathway may be for cars, okay, and or just a tractor. So I start to note the differences of what those things are. Even from a color coding, I could draw those with different colors. And here, vegetation and wildlife. So this is their capturing their thought pattern of what vegetation and wildlife is on this site. So what we'll notice is each one of these we call overlays is a different thing they're thinking about. If we try to put all of that information, look at all the words for each one of those things on one map, it's too confusing. We get lost. So we try to separate each of these thought patterns to a separate, say, section in our plan with a separate map to depict that thought pattern. That makes it more manageable. If you get really technical, this is they're trying to make a graphical representation of the microclimate. So they're drawing their, which is probably a way overboard for what we would achieve normally in like class. But they're trying to show the summer, the winter sun, solstice, and do that. It's a little bit busy. I would say that little graph thing there is really hard to read. So that's not probably going to be a great final way to describe that. It's too much. I would probably break that into like even 3 or 4 sub-maps for that one subject. It's too much on one map, okay? Soils. On this property, we had the high part, it's pretty flat, the mid-slope, and a really steep section at the bottom. It's going to have different soil profiles. So here they're outlining where they did their soil test. So they tested the soils in these places, and they're describing the type of soils, and then from there they could get into subsections of how to mitigate this soil, how to mitigate this soil, how to mitigate this soil, being that this property has 3 types of soil. So now at this point, they're kind of showing the zones, okay? In architecture, they call that habitat bubble diagrams. In permaculture, we call it zoning or zonation, okay? Our zones being zone 1 to zone 5 based on efficiency. In architecture, it's not really based on efficiency, but just based on usage, okay? But we try to believe that we were going to put the things we use the most closer to us to save time, okay? So that's a little bit a different thought process between permaculture and, say, architecture. So at the end, they come up with a detailed design plan. So all of those sketches finally get put into this nice little plan, and they haven't colored it yet, okay? They color at the end. The last thing you do is color your drawing. Because if you mess up, wow, you got to go back and color all that stuff again. So we don't really use the colored pencils all that much. They're going to use pencils. You're going to draw really, really light. And then once you're happy, darken it in. Once it's set, color it. So here we go. We can see that the beds, the flow, turned into keyhole garden beds. So they have a nice keyhole garden bed. We can see the pathways. We can see where the main tree functions are. And when you color this in, wow, it looks amazing. But sometimes we get too hung up on the color and not on the function. So first work out your functions, then we'll work out to coloring. So here's one. This is more of a probably architectural style. So a person has drawn this. They probably went to school and learned to draw in this style. So if you know how, it's fine to do. If you don't know how, don't worry about it. We'll look at more that are drawn by like more, hey, I can't draw. So if I can't draw, right, I'm not like an artist. I still can convey a message, and that's what we're going to try to do. So here's one. Well, we'll have to work with that. So here's one that is more so done with a computer. So I'm not good at drawing. I can go to Google. I can look for icons. So they have tree icons. So search tree icons. I get a little icon. And where I have a tree, I put an icon for that tree. Okay, so in this instance, this person basically drew their whole plan just by using something like InDesign or something like this and putting icons to represent their figures. Very simple. This one done more where they have overlay, somebody overlaying it with like AutoCAD. Again, if I don't have AutoCAD, I don't know how to already use it. It's probably not something I'm going to be able to learn. So I'm not going to try to do this. This is a very large drawing though. This is like a national park. So they have large zones. What they would do is show you the whole national park and the different areas. And then what we'll do is we'll zoom in. If I crop, remember I did the snag it? If I cut out, I can zoom in and then pull that to a new page. So I can use the cropping, right, of my plan to zone in. So once I make my overall plan and I want to show zone 1, right, I can take a picture of my plan and I put it into the computer. Then I cut out only zone 1, put it on a new page, expand it open, only talk about zone 1. Even within zone 1, I could cut out again, right? Pull it out. So that allows us to go like in and out just by doing cropping. Another one, architectural concept. This is by a consultant. The name of their company is literally BAD, Build a Dream. I don't want to speculate. Maybe BAD is out of business because, you know, your name of your consulting company also reflects something. So that's maybe a joke, but probably jokes don't go well in business. So yeah. Who made your design? BAD? Yeah, I don't know. So it was probably funny when they did it, but not really great. So there we go, another one like that. This is probably more so what most average people can do if you're not going to school and draw. Very simple. I've drawn it out. I have my house. I have the representation of the things I want. This was submitted. This is actually a consultant, a design consultant that did this drawing to try to sell. Critique, I think it's too busy. I think they shouldn't have the words on your master plan drawing. It's supposed to be the final picture standalone. So don't have your notes written on your drawing. Okay, just show the drawing, have your notes separately. Number 2, the master plan drawing should not have any other things other than the final stage. So you don't show the sun angles and the sector analysis. So in this drawing, they have the sector analysis over the master plan with the water flows and their notes. So it's a well-drawn picture and it can communicate those things, but it gets very busy. So if I'm trying to talk to you about those things, if I would separate those onto separate maps, the master plan map, the master plan with the sector analysis, the master plan with the water flows, it would be easier, the master plan with the access, to talk about each of those elements if they had their own map. Another one, a very architectural drawing, people putting section views, what's going on. Again, unless you have skill set to do that, it's not really possible to learn that in a short period of time. The reason I'm showing you architectural master plans is some people come to a permaculture course believing that, well, nobody knows about this stuff, and now I'm learning something new. Guys, architects know about permaculture, engineers know about permaculture. Architects and engineers both have taken permaculture courses. And so what's nice about the future and the movement is that these people are getting involved. They weren't at the beginning 40 years ago. Let's be clear, permaculture has been going for 40 years. People are master's degrees in architecture. I've taught students, right? And they're like, yeah, okay, that works in. So now they have this skill set that they learned for 5 years in school, drawing nicely. They put an ecological viewpoint to this skill set, and wow, look at the things that they can produce. And that's good because they can then give that ecological viewpoint to their clients, commercial people. But for our own personal usage, we don't need that much detail. It doesn't have to be that accurate. We need to just be able to convey the message of what we researched to ourselves so that when we go out in our garden to build our garden, we will be able to build our garden, right? So we then, at that point, will use our tape measure, use our strings, and lay it out, okay? They have training, and it's a different, say, genre. They're going to do it in very much more accurate. They can even do things with programs like overlays. So if you have, like InDesign, things like this, you can overlay, and this is called vector analysis. Since we don't have those programs typically, what will we do? My recommendation, you draw your first base map. And don't put anything on it. The base map is what's existing. The boundaries, any existing trees, an existing building. Don't draw anything else on it. Take a picture of it. I can copy that picture over. Now I have 2, right? Or I can use a copy machine. Copy it 5 times. Now, if I have my original base map, now I can put and draw water. And then I can draw access. And then I can draw all the things, and I make what's called overlays. I like stack it up, the same that they're doing. Yes, it's convenient if they have this special program and nice computers. But if I don't have that, it doesn't matter. I can still just take a simple square and layer up the things that I want to do. and it'll make a really nice presentation with very low-tech applications. Okay, we don't need that. So how would we do that? Okay, here's Google Earth. I went to Google Earth. There's a picture of a farm. Now that's a cow farm, probably only cows there. Very small house, so we can see a little bit of access in this little small house. And that's all that's there. And that might not even be a house. Let's assume it's a barn for the cow, so he can go stand out the sun. There's nothing on this property. That property is probably somewhere in the 150 to 200 acres, okay? I didn't measure it, just to give you an idea. But if I look at it, I can see the contour lines provided by Google Earth, and I can imagine what I might want to do with that. If I take that and I stick it into PowerPoint and/or I stick it into Word, I stick it into Excel, or any program that you have that can do paint, you know, like I can make lines and shapes. So then I can use lines and shapes to draw over the picture to dictate what I'd like it to be. I can do that like line by line and make lots of pictures and/or one big picture. So if this turns into that, so the master plan drawing on contour, including ponds, swales, and all of the plantings of trees, right? And then I could dictate what those trees were, right? Do you see how it can, just by using icons, lines, shapes, you take no plan to plan. Now, I'm going to tell you a secret about consulting. If you want to be a permaculture consultant, the drawing's free. I don't charge you for that. Come on, guys. That's not where the money's at. Where's the money? Implementation. The drawing is to show you what's going to happen, how much fencing, because I estimate the length of fences. I estimate the number of trees. I estimate the length of the swales. I can estimate the size of the ponds. I will then calculate how much that will cost. I will give you a quote to change your cattle property, which doesn't get much profit per square meter, because you know if you can only get one cow per acre, right? And then that cow takes 2 years to grow. So when you sell it, you get $1,000, but that's only $500 a year, divided by 10 acres. So I take $500 divided by 10 acres, or you get a profit of $50 per acre per year. Well, I think I could do better than $50 an acre per year, right? You think that wouldn't be difficult? But this person, he doesn't know. But he says he would like more money. Everybody'd like more money. He may even decide that he'd like to not have cows because the whole world's now against cows. You know, cows fart, right, guys? What a farce. Everyone farts. It's carbon neutral, by the way, guys. The cow eats grass, he farts. If the cow did not eat the grass will still go into the atmosphere. Makes no difference how many cows there are on the planet. It's like thinking about this. If I build a wall called the Great Wall of China, and I use stone, and the stone weighs 1,000 kilograms per cubic meter, and I build this huge wall, how much more does the earth weigh? Doesn't weigh anymore, guys. So you can't do it that way. Doesn't drive global warming. But this is what we do. How many trees, how many fences, how much water, and if you wanted to put a home, you can put your house, you can add a garden. All of these things are possible. But that's just basically what a simplified drawing allows me to do, to estimate what I need to do. Right? How big is the pond that you're trying to do? How many trees can you plant? Because those trees are all spaced correctly. And how would I do that? I zoom in. So I take this picture, pull it in, and I get really tight, and I overlay a grid over the top of the picture, right? How would I do that? Well, the grid line's on Excel. Each line can represent a square meter. Very simple program, free. You can even use Google Documents or Google Sheets, right? So free Google Sheets, a laptop. You make what can be considered as good as you need a master plan to do a large property. So your property is not going to be that big, right? So actually it's easier. When we have a smaller thing, we can get in more detail, right? Zoom in. The bigger ones are actually a little bit harder.